All right, it's story time with James. I guess this is my first vlog style video in quite some time. And if you've been following me on the YouTube channel and you haven't spoke to me in depth in the last 6 months, a lot of this information will be new. If you've been in contact with me fairly regularly, a lot of this you'll uh, be familiar with already. But what I'm going to talk about is where I'm at now. I'm at Draper, Utah, which is, I'm looking out towards Salt Lake City here. This is Point of the Mountain Flight Park, and this is the north side. The north side is the larger of the two sides. There's a south side as well. The south side is the video that I uploaded of Bob's first flight. That's the south side, and then that the first day paragliding is this same site. However, right now the conditions are much more strong and not strong in a bad way, like strong, like perfect. Like this is ideal conditions today for this site. So, so quickly, what I'm going to talk about is my first year of paramotor into why I'm here in Utah, into what I've been able to do while I'm here, and that includes the paragliding training. Some details about that. I'm going to talk about this video as I'm watching it and talking with y'all, and yeah. So I'm setting up here. Basically, there's going to be, gosh, 30, 40 people in the air, and it's actually a bit intimidating. This is my, uh, let's see, let's call it my 20th paragliding flight and my fourth or fifth flight actually soaring. And so I stood out here and watched people take off, and kind of how I judge whether I should be there or not, or be flying or not, is I'll pick someone out and I'll say, I know what I'm doing more than that guy, and I'll watch them kite, I'll watch them fly. I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely better than this guy. And so they'll go up and I'll watch and I'll see, is this what I want to get myself into? And so that's kind of how I'm judging it. Also, um, I've been under the training of Chris Croce. I think that's how you pronounce his name, and he's been a good influence as well, and as well as a bunch of other people I've talked to figure out whether I should be flying or not, and what to do and where to go and all that good stuff. Um, so as you can see, people are kiting. Some folks are nailing it better than others. Um, I'm still suiting up. Uh, for the initiated, I'm on a Gen Explorer 2 extra small, which is brand new, and the harness I have is the Advanced Access small, and yep. So um, basically, what I'm doing here is I'm watching other people. I'm kind of testing out, seeing if this is good conditions for me. I'm going to kite for a little bit and feel it out. And um, I guess spoiler, I do go all the way up the mountain. I completely clear the mountain that I'm facing right now eventually. And so, this was a very successful flight. I ended up flying for about an hour and 30, hour 45, something like that. Flew until most of the people started landing. So I'm like, well, I might as well land too. And so, yeah. Well, let me get back into a recap of the last year. So, in July 2020, I went to Aviator PPG and trained there in Lake Wells. And during training, I decided to stay in Lake Wells, and I had the opportunity to meet Bob Farewell. So Eric Farewell is the owner of Paramotor, Aviator Paramotor, and Bob Farewell is his father, and they live there in Lake Wells, and he has RV spots. And so I got in contact with him and said, hey, I want to stick around. The conditions here are super good. I like Central Florida. I've been living in Central Florida for the past 5 years. So let me park my trailer here and knock out a whole bunch of flights. So I started flying with Bob. Bob flies um, trikes. And all right, here goes my inflation. Yeah, so I'm just kind of setting my wing out with that inflation. I just have the risers in my hands, and I'm not clipped in. I'm just spreading the wing out. So Bob actually let me use one of his wings for about a month and a half while my wing came in, and so that was a huge boon because otherwise I would beg, borrow, and steal for a wing until the wing I wanted actually arrived. And over the next 6 months, I flew a lot with Bob, and I got about 90 hours of flight, well over 500 flights if you count all the touch and goes. I was recording all my flights and then going back through the video and counting up all my touch and goes and full stops and all that good stuff. And yeah, 6 months I really wanted to nail in my skills so that when I go to fly-ins, when I go do other stuff, that my skills are super locked in. All right, so here's my first inflation. I think I kept it up the whole time. Wind is fairly turbulent when you're back away from the side of the hill, so you're dealing with just choppy air. So if you're going to keep your wing up, you kind of got to be on it, and that's why you see some of the folks out here struggling a bit. It's not easy, and the wing that I'm on is super light as well, so it's almost easy mode. It is a high aspect. It's a really thin wing. The wing I've been flying on is much thicker, and so it holds air. It's easier to kite with. So there's a little bit of challenge there, but man, this wing just wants to fly, and yeah. So I'm making it look easy. A lot of it is the gear. Certainly some of it's me, but anyway, and it's brand new. And brand new gear just flies well. So this guy still struggling to get that wing up. Anywho, so back to where I was. So second 6 months, I started meeting a bunch of paramotor guys. So it was a bunch of the paramotor guys came down to Lake Wells, and they were there to do an SIV course. And what an SIV course is basically like catastrophe training. What do you do when your wing just crumples up in a ball and you're falling? Like, okay, now what? They actually put you into scenarios that you would expect to encounter if you're in turbulent conditions or something unexpected happens. So here I've got the wing up over my head. I'm kiting well. It feels good. I'm watching traffic. Traffic's pretty clear. Yep. So I think I just start making a gun for it. Still on the ground. Getting lifted a little bit. All right, everything's feeling good. Yep, I like the traffic. Here I go. And the ground just falls away. So there's enough lift here that I'm just kind of going up. So I'm still hanging out of my seat. My legs are down. I did not get into my seat, and you'll see when I start getting into my seat, which is right about there. Yeah, so now I'm in my seat. I'm leaning back. I'm steering the glider, checking traffic. And so my goal here is I'm just going to soar this smaller ridge back and forth and gain as much height as I can. So the way this site's set up, there's kind of a lower hill and the upper hill. And the upper hill is what I'm gunning for. First time I've gotten this much lift at this site. The other time that I flew this site is the video before. So one of the guys that I've met here, his name's Alejandro, and I'll talk about him a little bit more. He gave really good advice. He said there's a tower up over the hill, the big hill to my left out here, and you'll see it. It's not quite a cell tower. It's a little bit bigger than the cell tower. But anyway, he said if you're on the lower hill and you can see that tower, you've got enough height to make the upper hill. So I use that advice here. And I think I actually went a bit higher than that even, but that gave me the confidence that, yeah, okay, so now's the time you make the transition. And making the transition is really not a big deal. If you see that area to the left, there's a lot of landable area over there. So as long as you're not going with the wind in enough low enough that if you had to turn around, you couldn't turn around. So don't do something stupid, which is flying downwind when you can't turn around to land. So as long as you do that, I think that the risk of something bad happening, and you don't go over the the houses. So right here on my right, so the hill's off to the right. If you see, there's a lot of space. Then there's the place I took off. Then there's the houses. So like, just don't go over the houses until you've got a lot of height. So, and this day was fairly choppy, but I would say I'm on the as far as my tolerance for chop is not relaxed, but I'm not freaking out either. I'm just it's the right amount. Like I'm on the learning phase. Like I'm still learning my wing out. This is my third flight on this wing. I'm confident in the wing. What no? So yeah, on this particular wing, this is my third flight, but I've flown this kind of wing more in those 20 flights. So I'm like, checking my wing out, hitting the waves, so to speak, and yeah, everything's going well. So I'm just climbing, and this wing is awesome. You can tell I'm just kicking everybody's butt out here, and I'm not doing anything special. I'm just flying straight, and I'm just going up. Like this guy down here, he's bombing out for some reason. Maybe that's what he wants to do, but I I would have to try to get down there on this wing. So what wing you fly makes a big difference. And I think this gives a good demonstration of that. All right, next video. All right. So, anywho, so I'm just climbing, and I'm going to make a break for it towards the left sometime here. So let's get back to what I was talking about. Oh yeah, SIV course. So what an SIV course is especially when you go thermaling. So what I'm doing here is ridge soaring. Ridge soaring is pretty mellow in terms of the air quality, like how turbulent the air is, that sort of thing. It's really not very demanding on the pilot or challenging or risky or anything like that. This is kind of this isn't the bunny hill, but this is the green slope for like snowboarding as skiing and whatnot. So the south side's more of the bunny slope when the conditions are mellow, like what you saw with Bob's first flight. That was kind of a sled ride straight down. My first day I did 6 of those, and before I came over to this side in that first video that I did, where I didn't get this high, I was just kind of low. Also, I was on that video, I was flying my paramotor wing, which is not nearly as efficient as this thing. So I'll get into the differences of wings maybe way later. Okay, so SIV course. So in an SIV course, what they do is they put you in paragliding gear. They hook you up to a tow boat, and they tow you out over the water. And then they get on the radio and they say, okay, you see those red lines in the front? Pull those down, and that tucks the one side of your wing down, so you're only flying on half the wing if you just do one side. And so it's to acclimate you to that sort of thing, which is not common. Like, from my understanding, is if you are doing a really good job of controlling the wing, the likelihood. Oh, okay. So here I make a break for it. You probably could see that tower. Can't see it anymore. You probably saw it earlier. This is pretty non-eventful. I just kind of went over. I've got tons of height. I mean, it would take me a minute or two to get back to to that road. So, I'm just coming over this hill. I didn't want to get too far down this way because there's no one else over here, and that's maybe an indication maybe you shouldn't be over there. So I went ahead and turned around, and from here it's very straightforward. You just kind of hug the hill a little bit and ride it all the way up. So you pull down on the different stuff on the wing, then it starts flopping, and you steer it with the other side, and you can fly with half a wing. In fact, I think one of the things that they do in the SIV course, they have you hold it down and keep that one side disabled while you fly with the other half of your wing. So it's to increase your confidence on what you should do when things happen. So when you let go of it, how do you get the wing back into a normal configuration? What do you do if there's some tangles and lines, that sort of stuff. So I went. I met Brian Waller, Brooke Sheffield, James Sutherland, Scott Shamko while they did their SIV course, and I learned a lot of stuff there. One of the things that I learned was if you've only ever done paramotor and you go do an SIV, that's your first free flight experience, which to me is a little weird because uh, paramotoring and paragliding are similar in that go-karts and cars are similar. Like you steer left, it goes left. You steer right, and it goes right. But if you've ever been to like a go-kart track versus like a car track, and let's say you took a I don't know, like a Honda Civic to the regular track, and you're going as fast as you can, you're driving safely. That's more like paramotoring. Paragliding's like a go-kart, and yes, they're similar. They have four tires. They have a gas pedal and a brake pedal. Well, I guess paragliding doesn't have a gas pedal, but but the controls are the same, but the experience is very different. You really can't you can compare the two, but a lot of the skills do cross over. But if you're doing an SIV on your very first paragliding flight, this is just me talking. I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice. If you can, I think it's better if you run off a hill a few times and really get a feeling for what it's like to control the wing while you're much less lightly loaded on the wing, and also without the big metal thing that you're sitting in, because it has arms like this that's made of metal, and that's connected to the wing, and that's connected to the back of your motor, and you're being suspended by a harness. Whereas with this, it's just the harness, and the harness is plugged straight into the wing, and so when the wing does this, it feels a lot different. Um, so I learned that at the SIV course. That's really not a big issue, but for me, I feel like if I already was over understanding what it's like flying without a motor, then I would get a lot more out of the SIV course. The second thing I learned was at the SIV course, it you're using mostly borrowed gear. So that means, maybe it doesn't fit you right, or maybe you're having to trade gear with someone else because there's not enough gear for everybody. So maybe like between every flight you have to readjust every time, or or like maybe you someone else had your gloves and you can't find them. It's like, well, should I go up without gloves, or am I going to wait, or what? So anyway, what I learned is have your own gear, be on lockdown. If you have to borrow the gear, like whatever, like just have your gear, have it dialed in for you, have it tested, and don't share it with anybody. I know that's mean, but that's their problem, not your problem. So I learned that as well. And so between those few things, I decided to not do an SIV course until I had free flight experience. And for paramotor guys, doing an SIV is good, but honestly, if you're flying good conditions and you're not doing anything risky, the chances of you needing any of the skills that you learn at a SIV course is astronomically low. It's like in karate they teach you how to fall, properly, and that's kind of what an SIV course is. But all you ever do is walk down the street on the sidewalk. Like, do you need to learn how to fall properly in order to walk down the street on the sidewalk? No. So that's kind of that analogy. So anyway, I learned a lot watching them go through the SIV course, and they learned a lot too by actually getting up there and doing all that business with the wing and whatnot. So anyway, over the next 6 months, so that was kind of my first 6 months, and then the second 6 months, I spent a lot more time traveling. And I started going to fly-ins. So I'll talk about each of the fly-ins that I went to briefly. The first fly-in I went to was Parapalooza on the St. Johns River in Geneva, Florida. I think that's right. And that's Mark and Shauna Denny. And awesome folks, and I really got to spend a lot of time with them because there was a so there were two fly-ins at the same time that year, because one of the big fly-ins that happens every year got canceled, I think due to COVID, and someone else decided like, well, since that canceled, we're going to do one, and it happened to be at the same time. Most everyone went to this other one. I went to this one in over the St. Johns River. So if you go back and you look at the video where it's me flying and there's a drone at the St. Johns, that was that flying. I had a wonderful time, um, and not a lot of people showed up, which is unfortunate. But I think next year they're going to have a lot more attendance. And Mark and Shauna, they worked their butts off for that, and I had an excellent time. And I really recommend um, if you are pretty confident in your spot landing, then definitely give it a go. I know that there's a lot of water there and it looks intimidating, but there's also a lot of places to land. So if you've got the skills for it, it's really an awesome place to go fly. After that, I went to the Bad Apples Fly-In, and Bob went with me as well, and that's where we met Scott, Chris, and Josh, and I had really an excellent time at the Bad Apples Fly-In. It was, I think, in 300 something pilots in attendance. There had to have been more than 90 people in the air, and it was just absolutely awesome place to be. And I got to camp out for the weekend and had a really good time. And I got to, as I was traveling around the southeast, I got to spend some time with some of the folks that I just named off. And while I was hanging out with Brooke Sheffield, Waylon, and Derek Trout, Bob sent us some news about his daughter Becca, who had a skydiving accident and was in the hospital and was, broke her neck type deal, and is her lower body, everything below the neck is not responding. So, when we were standing there, I got it on a text, and Brooke and Waylon and Derek were standing around. And I told them, they're like, man, it's like everyone really, really feels for the Farewell family, what they're having to go through. And so that's when I learned about that. And I had another fly-in coming up called Moonshiners. And Moonshiners is in, I guess I didn't talk about Bad Apples. Bad Apples is in Georgia at the Hodges Field, which Hodges Field is kind of a neat place. There's a guy that owns a Grass Strip Airport, and there's a lot of ultralight activity there, and there's a lot of RC activity there, and the place is well manicured, so it's really, really a pleasant place to be. So Moonshiners is in East Tennessee, in Mountain City, Tennessee, or near Mountain City, Tennessee. Same deal, but this is an actual airport with an active runway, so there was like jets coming in and out during the day, and that was kind of interesting. The fly-in was scheduled to be like Thursday through Sunday, but I decided to come the Sunday before so that I can travel on the weekend, and then do work during the day of the fly-in. And for whatever reason, I arrived at the fly-in on Sunday, and by Wednesday, I really felt like that I should go to Utah and be with the Farewell family, and do what I can to. So the video stopped again. Do what I can for them, and I felt like it was a good time to do so because Bob had been giving us updates, and Becca had left the ICU and is now and is then and still is in rehab in a state-of-the-art brand new rehab facility that specializes in her condition, and here in Salt Lake. And so of course, when you hear something like that, you're like, hey, let me know if there's anything I can do, like anything at all. And there's a lot going on, and the last thing they need is someone else to have to deal with logistics for. But by this time, I was like, well, she's in rehab. Maybe things are a little more routine now, insofar as they can be routine, and maybe now I can pitch in and do something cool. So I gave Bob's son Eric a call, and I was like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. I want to go surprise Bob and just show up and be happy and merry, and maybe give them someone else to talk to maybe help out around the house, whatever. And he said that Bob was actually working on getting his gear shipped out to Salt Lake so he could fly. I was like, oh, really? Well, if he's trying to fly, then you know things must be settled enough that he has the mental capacity to do something like fly, but also continue to take care of his daughter. So I felt like this was the right time to go do it. And I had taken the Friday off. Was it the Friday? No, I had taken the following Monday off because after Moonshiners, I was going to travel to Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, or is it South Carolina? Anyway, Kitty Hawk, which is like there's a museum there where you can in a runway where you can go fly at the same place where the Wright brothers did their first powered flight. And so that was really cool. I was going to go out there with Brian Waller and just have a good time. But I just I really wanted to go out to Utah and see Bob because he had flown with me and they've been so gracious towards me, and I kind of wanted to give back however I could. So I decided to on Wednesday I decided to go to Utah, and from Mountain City it was a 33-hour drive, and I just made a straight shot. And it was kind of funny because I was in Nebraska, and I was texting Eric. I was like, "Hey, I actually don't know where exactly I'm going. I know it's Utah. I suspect it's Salt Lake City, but like I have no idea." And he was like, "Well, Bob is staying near the point." I'm like, "I don't know what that is." And I made a little image here. I'll throw it up on the screen of the interaction. And then Noah. So Noah is a paramotor instructor that teaches there in the Salt Lake area, and Eric got me in touch with Noah to help coordinate my arrival. And Noah was like, "Oh, that's Draper, Utah." I was like, "Okay, I can go to Draper." It's like, because I looked up online, I was like, "The Point, Utah," or Point, Utah, and there's just like, anyway. So the reason why that's funny is that a few days later after I arrived, and I'll get to that point in the story. I'm running off the hill at the point of the mountain, and now I know what it is. It's like, you know, because I actually had no idea. Like, I knew that Salt Lake, the area in general, there's a lot of paragliding there. Like, I did know that, and so, one of the reasons I wanted to go is like, hey, if I was there maybe one weekend or whatever, I can go get trained and see what that's all about. Going back to the SIV, I wanted to have some free flight experience so that again, but I didn't know anything about like the organizations, what the flight areas were, or anything like that. My priority was to number one, don't add any logistics for the Farewell family. So I had booked an RV park in the area, and that's where I was going to go. And then wanted to help Bob get in the air because I knew he was trying to get his equipment, and I know that he's spending like every day at the rehab center with Becca, both Bob and Tina. And I knew that it's like, if he's doing that every day, he's not going to have any time to get the gear ready, to figure out the logistics of how you're going to move that gear around, all that stuff. So I wanted to help Bob do that. And so I get to Salt Lake at a really small airport south of Salt Lake. I can't think of the name right now. And I meet up with Noah, and I took a picture with Noah. And and I knew Bob had been to that airport once before, and with Noah. I don't know why, but there's like this old dilapidated school bus out there. So I took a selfie, well, I guess this selfie, with Noah and the school bus behind me, and that's how I let Bob know that I was there. So that really that worked. It was a big surprise for him, a pleasant surprise for him, and so he wanted to. So I camped at the airport that night, and he wanted to come out in the morning to see me and see me fly and all that stuff. And he was just so happy, and that worked. And pleasantly. I'm glad that that worked. And so as it turns out, they are staying. Uh, if you, I'm actually on the video pretty close to over their house. I'm not far enough away from the mountain, but basically they're in one of the houses down there, that's right next to the flight park. And as it turns out, it's a house that so Eric, Eric is aviator, and he trained a guy. So this guy, his name's Matt, and Matt came down to Lake Wells and trained with Eric, and they kind of kept in touch. And when Eric sent out a signal, I was like, hey, my mom and dad, they need a place to stay in Salt Lake because they're going to, the ICU and later the rehab center. And Matt was very gracious to let them use his house. So anyway, I meet Bob, and Bob's like, "You need to come stay with us at the house." I'm like, "What? What house?" He's like, "Yeah, there's this house, and he's letting us stay there, and there's an extra room, and there's like room on the street for your camper." And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Well, you're living in the city, and there's room for the street on camper?" Because I'm always suspicious when people say that, because there's HOAs and things like that. You can't just A lot of places you can't just park a camper on the street, especially if it's like a super nice neighborhood. But he's like, yeah, we're in a cul-de-sac and you can just stick it on the street. And I'm like, okay. So I get here, and turns out that there's actually a lot of campers here. Um, you know, who would imagine that people that live next to a flight park are also kind of outdoorsy people, and they have things like boats and campers and stuff like that. So, as long as it doesn't look like a beat down, beige, off-white piece of junk, I'm sure it's not any questions. And so since then, and until now, which was about, I guess, 2.5 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, something like that, my camper's been on the street in a cul-de-sac, and it's out of the way. It's not in front of anyone's house, and it just worked out that I've been able to just stay here at the house with Bob and Tina. And what I've been able to do for them, obviously get Bob in the air, which I did get Bob in the air. I'll come back to that later. And I've been doing dishes, putting the dishes up, going to grocery shopping, like the refrigerator died, and I went and bought a deep freeze and put that downstairs and moved all the stuff. And meanwhile, they're going to the rehab center every day. And sometimes Bob also does the morning shift and the night shift, and then the next morning shift. And so, anything that I can do that gives them more rest when they get back to the house and less work to do, that's, kind of what I've been doing, and that's been working out for them. So I think, despite obviously what's going on here, I've benefited greatly just by being here, but I've also contributed as much as I can. As it's worked out. And, so anyway, that's what's happened at the house since I've gotten here. As far as paragliding, since I've gotten here, so Matt is good friends with Chris Santacroce, Croce, and so he was like, "Hey man, you want to go meet Chris? He's a paraglider instructor. He runs his own school and all this stuff." I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure. I want to get acclimated to this." And so that's when I met Alejandro, and Alejandro is a good friend of Matt, and he's from Venezuela, and he's got stories to tell about how Venezuela has gone over the past couple decades. And so I've heard about it, and I've learned about it, but hearing it firsthand from somebody has been an experience. So anyway, Matt and Alejandro, they're both flyers, and they've flown here at the Point for 10 years or something like that. So he's like, "Yeah, you should meet Chris, and I bet you he can get you all sorted out." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So we meet Chris, and Chris was super cool, and I told him about Bob, and he was like, "Well, I've got this trike here, and it's for my nonprofit." And so Chris's nonprofit is called Chris, by the way, he's at Superfly Paragliding. So he just like Eric owns Aviator, Chris owns Superfly, and he's got a nonprofit called Project Airtime, where he takes people who are disabled or whatever it is that would normally otherwise be able to do something like paraglide or paramotor, and get them in the air one way or the other, whether it's just a tandem where someone else is flying, or he's even got this cool trike that it's a paragliding trike. And he it's amazing what he does. I've seen him send someone off on this trike who's got some who was training for paramotor, who's got just issues with their knees, and so he did this trike, and it's got handles on it, and they get the wing up on, they get on the side of the hill and they get the wing up, and then they kind of push them off, and then you just go do a sled ride down the hill in this paragliding trike. It's like I never thought something like that would really be a thing. So I'm like having to start each video so I can kind of see what's going on too. Going back to the flight here, yeah, I'm well over the mountain here. I'm not quite as high as everyone else because I'm still kind of figuring things out. At some point in this flight, I am the highest guy, so yay me. No skill involved there. I just have a nice wing and I fly straight. But anyway, so going back to Chris, so Chris has this paramotor trike that it's for his nonprofit, and he figured it's like, well, Bob's trying to get in the air, and Eric's trying to get gear out here, which is expensive, and then you got to assemble it, and I think it was like all new gear, and instead of doing all that, he's like, hey, why don't you use this trike? It's new-ish. It needs to be run. It needs to be put through its paces so that we're comfortable that it's working well enough to send people along for the ride. And he had a sneaking suspicion that Bob would probably like to take his daughter at some point, and so that would fall right into what the nonprofit does. So it's kind of a win-win. And so what I've been able to do is I set up all the logistics for how are we going to transport the trike. I looked over the trike. I replaced the hoop of the trike with it had carbon fiber spars on the trike, and replaced it with all aluminum. And I squared away all that and got it all going, and was able 2 days ago to get the trike and Bob out to the airport, and he was able to get a good 40 minutes of flying in. And it took a couple of tries to get in the air because we're not used to the altitude and the setup. Like, for example, it's a right-hand throttle, so that's different. The clip ends and all that stuff is different. The airport's new, the altitude's different. So there's a lot of things that are needs to be done well and done right before you take someone up on a tandem. So Bob's flying by himself, and I'm out there helping him get the wing laid back out and get everything sorted out. And he got in the air, and I got up in the air with him. We had a nice flight, and so that was really something that it's like all of this work that I put in driving halfway across the country, more than halfway across the country. Everything's kind of working out. Finally got Bob in the air, and yeah, so that's going well, and obviously paragliding is going well too. That's about current. So how's Becca doing? So Becca, all this information is secondhand through Bob, but right now the most positive thing to say is that she is, it's a daily struggle still. There's a condition, it has a name, but basically when you have the kind of accident that she had, your body acts really weirdly to normal stimulus. So maybe there's, maybe your body is positioned not quite right, or maybe there's a bunched up piece of sheets under your back, and your body just kind of freaks out. It does odd things like increase your blood pressure or decrease your heart rate or make you sweat profusely or make you shivers. Like this sort of thing is a daily occurrence. And also, but anyway, their main goal right now, I mean, gosh, I can't think of all the goals that they possibly have, but one of the big ones that I think would change drastically how she is cared for is whether she can breathe on her own or not. So she's still on the ventilator, and the ventilator has a setting where it allows the person to initiate a breath, and then it does the rest of the breath. And I think 2 days ago she spent 9 hours on that mode, which is just absolutely awesome. And and she's ahead of the curve of people who have been on a ventilator that go through their training to get off the ventilator for as long as she's had. And so yeah, so she's a fighter. She's in great spirits. It's not all peaches and rainbows, but they're it's a new experience and they're getting through it. Um, and also, I want to give a huge special thanks to Eric and the contact that he made. And he's really a guy that gets out there and talks to people and gets to know them and treat them like family, and that's really paying dividends here. And I know that's not, it's not doing it specifically for selfish reasons, but um, you know, for Eric to be the kind of person he is in the profession that he's in and making the contacts that he's in has made all of this possible. As nice as it's been, and this is an incredible place and an incredible opportunity that Matt has given the Farewell family, and by extension me, to come out here and stay at his house and be a part of the paragliding stuff that's going on out here, and have just an awesome place to stay while the Farewell family gets their footing. So that's just really truly amazing. And coming back to this flight, I guess there's not a whole lot to say. I flew until the sun started going down, and the air started dying off. And I guess I have one last thing to talk about. So I was worried that I would not like free flight for a number of reasons, but one of those is, so far all of my free flight experience has been the soaring ridge, and there's a lot of people out here, and so I'm used to having to deal with traffic. So that first video where you're seeing people pass like this left and right, I'm okay with that, but it's not fun. It's not, oh yeah, I want to go play chicken with people in the air and trust them to stay on one side while I'm on the other side, and it's like, oh, that sounds like fun, doesn't it? It's kind of stressful. So on this flight, I was able to get up here where you can tell, like, you're kind of watching people, but largely you're just doing your thing. It's not quite as free as paramotor is, and that's kind of the point I'm trying to make. Is when I'm paramotoring, I'm the amount of time that I spend thinking about traffic is just minuscule compared to the time I'm speaking. The amount of time I spend about thinking about flying. And that's one of the things I love about paramotor, and I think that's one of the things that makes paramotoring truly unique in all of aviation, is that the amount of time that you spend thinking about safety compared to thinking about, gee, this is fun, or ooh, what's that over there? It's like 5% thinking about safety and flying, and 95% just doing what you want to do and have fun flying. I think that that's very unique in all of aviation because of the simplicity of it. You're really flying a glider that's, I mean, the gliders that we fly in paramotor, especially when you're starting out, you don't even have to steer them. You can just stow the brakes and just lean one way or lean the other. It's such a relaxing experience, or rather, it can be, if you set yourself up in the right conditions and all that stuff. But largely, I've been flying in Central Florida, which is this super bunny hill every day, and so I got really used to just being able to fly in a direction and just do my thing and peace out or chill out, or if I wanted to do something more exciting, I can do the wing overs and stuff like that and practice getting more acrobatic. But I was afraid that I wouldn't like paragliding as much because you have to spend a lot more time thinking about it, which is a plus or a minus depending on your personality and what you're trying to get out of it. But this flight was really cool because once the sun went down and everything smoothed out, I could stow my brakes. I could fly straight out over towards the city over here, and actually that's how you get back down. So the easiest way to get back to the ground is just fly away from the hill. And when you fly away from the hill, you fly away from the upcurrent and you just come back down. And I think I'll edit the end of the videos and the end of this conversation so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But so I in this flight, I was able to experience stow the brakes, relax, there's nothing to think about. There's no one in front of you. You're just soaring straight away. You got plenty of height. It took me 10 minutes of just flying straight to get back down to where I could land. And so that's I got that experience. It's like I'm flying. This is cool. Look at the wing. Look at the risers. Look at the ground. Not you to be in that moment and not have to worry about other stuff. That's one of the biggest things I like about paramotoring, and you can get that with paragliding as well. Although certainly, especially when you get into thermaling, it requires a lot more work on the behalf of the pilot. And so that gets me into, okay, where am I going from here? So I want to do that SIV course now. Now that I've gotten my free flight experience and skills in to a degree here, I want to go ahead and do that because I do want to get into thermaling, but that's scary. And it's scary because that's where you get into more turbulent air. That's where it's much more challenging, much more demanding on the pilot, of course, given the conditions. You don't want to go straight out to the desert in the middle of summer and in the middle and right at midday when it's the hottest and there's dust devils and all the most violent things you can think of. But one of the cool things about Central Florida is that it's actually one of the best thermaling spots in terms of being able to get cross-country records. And so that includes paragliding and sailplanes. So all the big folks that want to drum up big numbers in about late February, early March is the perfect conditions for that in Central Florida. And I know that the sailplane guys, they'll fly from Central Florida to Georgia and back in a day. And the paraglider guys will break records and things like that, like worldwide records. They'll come down to Central Florida to do cross country flights at Fort. So I already kind of knew that thermaling's a thing in Florida. And there's no hills you run off, so you get towed up. So that's an activity I want to dip my toes into slowly. And if you're going to do thermaling, you need to do an SIV course because your wing will get thrashed in thermals, and that's just how it goes. So that's kind of it, I think. And yeah, so that's all there is to talk about. If you get to the end of this, shoot me a text. Let me know that you did. I would be interested to see what people think or whatever if you got all the way through. I know my mom's going to watch it all the way through, so there's at least one person that will make it worthwhile to edit the videos together for. So anyway, yep, just reach out, and I guess that's all I have to talk about. All right, bye.